What an interesting and relevant topic this is. And to that effect, we have two very exciting speakers to present this topic. The first speaker is Kosta from Power Smart Solutions. Now, Power Smart Solutions is a large company that provides quality solar systems on a mass scale. The second speaker is Stuart from IQ Solar, and as the name implies, this is a very smart organization. Stuart will provide useful insights regarding solar PV systems as well as monitoring systems. Last but not least, we will conclude this presentation with a panel discussion followed by questions from the audience. I'm certain that by the end of this, we will all have gained some very useful insights regarding solar, irrespective of where everyone is on their solar journey. Therefore, without further ado, let's proceed on to the first speaker, who's Kosta.
Okay, Vasilios has invited me here today. We're a Queensland-based company, but we've branched out from Wollongong, Sydney, Newcastle, Northern New South Wales, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast. We've got Hervey Bay, Rockhampton, Mackay, Gladstone, Bundaberg, and right up to Townsville. So we cover quite a large area of New South Wales and Queensland. We're probably responsible about 3,000 to 4,000 systems per year. So, and that's mainly domestic. We basically do a bit of commercial work, but it's more in-house seeing people like yourselves. Now we've done over 23,000 installs ourselves. We're sort of proud of that, and we used to be part of the Clean Energy Council. We're a retailer now. It's also changed to does anyone know the change of Clean Energy Council? And it's gone through to, you'll know, to New Energy Tech. Basically, it's sort of, to be a retailer, you've got to jump for a few more hoops to get your licenses and all that kind of stuff to be a retailer for them as well. Now, problems with panels out on the road. There's a lot of people. Does anyone have a system on their roof at the moment? And how old is that system? Or
4 years old.
Who's 5,
6,
10.
10? Yeah.
Mine's been there since 2007.
So
when the government offered us.
Yeah, we used to have. I got involved in solar back in 2010, and we had that different incentive. That feed-in tariff was, I think, 60 cents a kilowatt or 66 cents a kilowatt.
The federal government gave me something like 8,000.
Oh, well, that was probably that's the first one, and there was the one after that. So I got involved a little bit after that. Your system's still going and working, or?
To a point. My son Jeremy had some questions.
Yeah, no worries.
Whether my system's too old, or I need to.
Yeah, look,
what's happening.
A lot of those systems were designed to go for about 10 to 12 years, and depending on the sun that we get here in Australia, it also heats up a lot of the silica cells and what kind of glass would protect and all that sort of stuff. So systems right now are way different compared to what they were 5 or 10 years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago as well. So we'll probably go through some of that later on today and have some questions on some of the people who've got systems on their roofs already, or what they're looking at putting on, or if they're replacing a system, what to get and what sort of advantages on that. Look, there are a lot of problems out there. There are a lot of cheap sort of generic copies, and a lot of companies selling cheaper quality systems that don't last. And there's also very good quality ones as well that do last as well. So, we can probably go through all that today as well. And we probably do about 100 to 150 installs a week, but we're removing about an average of 60 to 70 systems off roofs for systems that are under 5 years old, not alone systems that are older. So I think when there's ever a government grant involved, there's always, companies out there are starting up, putting inferior products on roofs and shutting their doors 1 or 2 years later. I think there was the Clean Energy Council had done an order on about 12,000 homes a few years ago, and out of the 12,000 homes, I think only 30% of the systems that were on roofs were compliant. And out of the 30%, 10 or 12% of those didn't even have the panels on the roof that the customer initially bought in the house. So a lot of those companies opened up their doors, sold a lot of products, and then shut their doors and moved on. And people were left with a lot of systems on roofs that, weren't even sort of meant to be on their roofs, So that's happened a lot. And I think it happened back with the insulation bats and all that sort of stuff. Remember the free insulation bats from the government? We had a lot of a debacle back then with that. I remember my own parents, one of the guys installing it got electrocuted because there was metal fibers in the bats. And, he almost lost his life at my parents' house. I remember seeing that and I was like, what's going on here? And I was like, get all that stuff out of the house, take it out. We don't even want it in there, So a lot of that sort of stuff happened back in the day. And I think in the solar industry, same sort of thing, with one of the main reasons I work for Power Smart is, they're an Aussie company. Three guys started back in 2007. Before that, they were an electrical company, used to supply a lot of products to homes like inverters and panels and cabling and racking. An ex-electrician and installer, an ex-builder and an ex-military guy put the company together. I think we've done close to 23,000 installs and not had one complaint with the ACCC Department of Fair Trading. So we're a clean company. We're proud of that. We've got quite a lot of good reviews. We do everything in-house with us. So basically, how we do, we get a lot of people calling us, booking an appointment. So one of our solar consultants will come out and see you. They'll assess your meter box to see if it's all up compliant and ready to go. And also, design a system compared to what you're using in your house as well, with your electricity bills right there and then, rather than just sort of putting anything on your roof. So they'll go for about a 45-minute sit down with you, go for everything with you, see what your concerns are, what you're looking for, and put a product on your roof that's going to have pretty much good warranties. And the method of us installing it, what we do is we do everything in-house. Most of our installers work for us and have been working for us. We've got over 174 staff that work for us. Value for yourselves, basically. We want to always design a system that's sort of going to, bring your bill right down from what you're spending to sort of a similar spend. So if you're spending about $500 a quarter and it's costing you $38 a week, you want to get a system on your roof for about $38 a week as well. So that way you're sort of not putting extra funds out, and we do a green energy payment plan to pay that sort of thing off as well.
You tell me about the meter boxes.
Meter boxes and all that. Back in the day, you could install on old ceramic fuses, all that sort of stuff, and the backing boards could be timber and all that sort of stuff. But right now, you've got to have a compliant meter box. We would like to always have a look at the meter box and see if anything needs to be upgraded. Because we have our own in-house team, we upgrade it ourselves. We have a partial upgrade. So if you've got old ceramic fuses, we'll remove that and put a proper switchboard in it. Or if the whole meter box needs to be replaced, we'll replace that as well for you. And we can always put that cost into that sort of weekly payment as well, rather than paying off it at the end as well. I think the rules have changed for meter boxes. New South Wales and Queensland have different rules. I think in New South Wales, we can still have asbestos backing as long as it's not crumbling. In Queensland, we're not allowed to. So the rules have changed, I think, from different states and all that. That's pretty much a good meter box. We want to see hinges on the right-hand side, or so that the whole board can open up. A nice sort of fuse box with a meter. It's got a meter there, so the guys can work in there and open up the box and work nice and cleanly. So that's the kind of sort of
You actually install your install
we can replace just the backing board as well. We can get that replaced for you. But most of the time we'll just take the whole thing out and put a whole brand new one in there. In New South Wales, as long as the asbestos board isn't crumbling and falling apart, they can leave it. It's a normal defect in Queensland, but we sort of try and get them replaced if we need to.
expensive.
We actually only charge $1,250 to do a full meter box upgrade, where an electrician could charge you $2 to $3 grand. So it's part of our service. To do that, because we have our own in-house team and we can afford to sort of do it at cost price. We want to put the solar on your roof, so we want to help you guys get the solar on your roof and try and put that meter box upgrade. Even with the partial, we charge around $790, and usually it's about $900 to $1,200 to do a partial upgrade, which is just the switchboard upgrade. They're all old ceramic. The old ceramic ones, yeah, remember those with the little wires all stuck? Yeah, they're the ones that we want to sort of upgrade from that. You can get away with it, but what happens, the last person who worked on your meter box is sort of liable for it as well. We've got a good reputation, we want to keep that, we want to make sure that everything's safe. Monitoring, solar monitoring, all that. We got these different ways of monitoring your system. With us, our SunGrow, we use a iSolar Cloud. SunGrow can monitor it, what's going in and out. You can put an export limiter or use Solar Analytics for that. But most of our customers just use the monitoring service, and we can also monitor it from our head office as well. See how your system is running and working. These days, everyone can just put on their iPad or on the phone and see how your system's producing. So what have we got here? That's just another sort of job that we've done. But basically, any other tips for you for looking out for a new system is use a reputable company that's been around for a while. Probably a lot of companies out there don't even come out to see you, or they do everything over the phone and not even based in Australia. There's some really good quality companies out there, and there's some really, unfortunately, there's some cowboys out there as well. Probably get that to the end. Let Stuart jump up, and then we'll answer some questions together, and we'll go from there if you like. That's
Thank you, Kosta.
I don't know if it's going through this.
Fantastic. So what we're talking about today is how to install a system that is going to last a long time. Solar should be a long-term asset. I'm really pleased to hear that you put yours on in 2007 and it's still going. That is a success story, actually. Quite often homeowners base things on a very short sort of payback period. And the payback for solar, and what we mean by payback is how long it takes to recoup your initial investment. If you're paying for it outright, often it's 3 to 5 years. There are lots of budget systems in the market which will give you a faster payback. But as you pointed out, we're taking them off as well. So you can have a great fast payback, but if it doesn't last, and it's an asset that could easily last 20 years with some work in the middle. So what we find is that in doing work for businesses, so my background is 13 years in solar. We do a mixture of residential and commercial work. When we talk to business owners, often they do have a longer time frame. So the paybacks can be not as attractive as a home system, but they are still looking at what's still going to be working in 10 or 15 years at least. My starting point often with solar is that it can be confusing. Having had literally thousands of in-home appointments myself and just as many conversations with people, people have got misconceptions around solar. And part of that is because a lot of solar salespeople themselves are not very well educated. So they explain things poorly. It adds to misconceptions that people have got. The brands that we're talking about with solar are not familiar to people. So things that are familiar to us every day, all the brands of panels, Trina and JA and Jinko and so forth, they're just words. They're almost meaningless. There's a few that sneak in there. So Hyundai make panels. People go, Hyundai, I know them. LG used to make panels. They've stopped now, but they made a very, very good panel. But it is a confusing area. Even understanding the basics of what is actually happening with the electricity mean that people get confused. And then in the absence of understanding it fully, what they will then do is revert to the simplest mechanism they have, which is to look at a price and say, okay, that system is $4,000. Great, that's what I'll do, rather than really understanding the differences between a system that you can, probably $5,000 is the low point now, even with your big retailers, but a really good quality system will actually cost substantially more than that. We all know that solar is everywhere. It's currently producing about, renewables themselves are up to about 40% of all the electricity in Australia. Solar is hovering around 12%. And a graph that points upwards is always good, but that's just the growth in systems. The price of solar has come down to perhaps 1/3 of where it was when I started in solar in 2010 and you. So we used to sell 3 kilowatt systems for $12,000. So now you could easily get a 10 kilowatt system for that money. So that's one of the changes, is the decreasing price. The other has been new finance options, which you guys obviously use very well. But it's possible to just within 10 minutes get finance for solar through a range of companies. So it's very easy to put on a solar system and have it producing power for you and saving you more than it's costing you right from the get-go. We all know why solar matters. Last year, we had a price increase of around 20% on residential bills. This year, it's happening again with about 18 or 20%, and there's another one planned for next year. The reason why these are coming is that what happened was that the wholesale price of electricity jumped up by several times middle of last year, and consumers are actually somewhat protected. So the retailers have to go to the regulator to petition to increase the rates they charge you. If they'd passed on the full weight of those increases, we would have all just seen a doubling of power prices. And for business customers who are under contract, what we did see is that people who came off a 1 or 2 or 3 year contract and went back to negotiate were facing anything up to a 4 to 5 times increase in their power cost, because they are not protected the same way that householders are. That's backed off a little bit. It's now only back down to being about 2 or 3 times what they were paying. But everybody that's coming off contract, that's a business customer, is facing massive increases. So people that have been looking at solar and had it on the back burner because it wasn't quite viable for them, you know, maybe it had a 7-year payback period and there's lots of other things in their business that could be better than that, suddenly found that they could get a 3-year payback period on solar. Or if they were financing it, it was just immediately cash flow positive. I'm sure everyone here has been notified of their, I think June is when their increases are coming through from most retailers. How many people here actually have solar? Oh, great, really good number. Okay, cool. What goes into a solar system? It's 2 main visible aspects that we see: the panels and the inverter. There are, just to show you some of the confusion, this is some of the panel brands that are out there. And I've kind of rated these from average up to the best. And the same is true with inverters. This is not a comprehensive list, but there are a lot of choices. So this adds to the confusion. When people start looking at these brands, they start wondering, am I making the right choice? Am I making a poor choice by choosing this one that's been recommended? Are they just choosing that because that's what they've got in their factory and so forth? But in fact, with panels, I would say almost there are many differences between panel companies. The panels will actually pretty much all perform. What we look at when we choose something is the standing of the company. So a couple of our favorites, we're quite partial to Trina, who've been making panels since, I think, 97 or 98, and have been a player in the Australian market since 2007 or 2008. So really offer good support. With inverters, inverters do all the work in a system, actually. So they're converting DC current to AC current, and they're the most likely component to fail. We've put on we probably use 4 or 5 of these brands from time to time. Our bread and butter is SunGrow, which I think yours is too. I think they might even be the largest inverting company in the world now. Yeah, they have full 10-year warranty, really good product. We have had failures. And what matters is how quickly they fix them. And we have found them to be absolutely remarkable. They can use remote diagnostics, and they look at it and they simply say, we will send you out a new unit immediately. Enphase do the same, which is a microinverter system, but they're able to do this remote diagnosis. And most companies, well, the ones that we want to deal with are those that back us fully with those. If we have to send things back and they look at them, the time delays just make that terribly confusing. Just jumping back to here. So the main 2 components, panels and inverters, obviously the balance of system, cabling rails and so forth, which really doesn't get seen by people. But monitoring, I think, is one of the key aspects of a system. And I will talk more about monitoring shortly. One of the key considerations to have is one of the terms is the difference between a kilowatt and a kilowatt hour. And I've as I've said, I've had thousands of conversations with people, and people don't grasp the concept. So a kilowatt is the analogy is it's like speed. It's an instantaneous measurement of power. So when we talk about panel capacity, we talk about kilowatts. It's a potential that set of panels can produce. The load that you have in your house is also measured in kilowatts as an instantaneous measurement. And if you used an appliance, say a kettle, which draws about 2,000 watts or 2 kilowatts, if you use that for 1 hour, you would have used 2 kilowatt hours. So kilowatt hours, if kilowatts is speed, kilowatt hours is distance. That's my analogy. Sorry? Hours. Distance. It's so that's all right. I'm half deaf too. It's the accumulation. So it's using that amount of power for a certain period of time. And kilowatt hours is how our energy retailers bill us. When you look at your bill, you're measured in kilowatt hours. So you could have short peaks of usage, but if they're short, that won't give you a lot of kilowatt hours. If you use something like an air conditioner, which is one of the biggest loads in most houses, if you turn on a fully ducted system, it might draw 5 or 7 kilowatts. Therefore, if you use that for a 24-hour period, you've used, close, 100 kilowatt hours. And older air conditioners are worse, obviously. Don't have to read all these points, but one of what this is saying is that the industry is actually very highly regulated. There are Clean Energy Council rules, there are Australian standards. For companies that are ISO certified, they also have their own internal regulations to follow. It is actually a highly regulated industry. And those standards have improved massively over the last few years. Going back to when I started, even something as simple as how cables are laid, cables externally had to be inside a conduit, but inside a roof cavity, they could just be free hanging. And that's how most things were then done. If someone goes back, and that's changed now, so everything has to be inside a conduit, including what's inside your roof cavity. If somebody goes back to work on a system, in fact, oftentimes they won't, because as soon as they touch it, they become responsible for it, and they have to bring it up to standard, which is one of the reasons why a lot of old systems come off, is that the cost of rectifying a problem and recabling is equivalent to just pulling it off and putting a new system on in many cases. And now, because the panel outputs are so much higher, in 2010, for example, the panels we were using were fractionally physically smaller, but they were around 175 watts. Yours from 2007, they might only be 140 watts or 150 watts per panel. And now commonly we're using 415 or 430 watt panels. And for commercial jobs, anything up to 550 watts. You've covered some of these numbers, but there was a survey in 2018 that 25% of, around 20% or so of systems were actually not meeting Australian standards. 2% were actually unsafe, and a quarter were just delivering poorly. And this is really common. One of the biggest reasons is monitoring. So in terms of what goes wrong with systems, I'm not going to go all through this list, but there are equipment failures. In fact, in my entire time in solar, I've never had a panel problem other than a forklift driving into a pallet and things like that, which is fairly obvious. We have had panels that have also broken in transit or been hit by golf balls, but not actually equipment failures. I am aware of some larger commercial systems. One of them was over 1 megawatt that was actually entirely replaced under warranty for an electrical fault. But I'm not allowed to say who it was or which building it was on. But the common problems are to do with rushed installations. So a lot of these cookie cutter companies with the budget prices, their installers are doing 2 or 3 jobs a day. They will run the cables in the easiest path for them, which often means externally over buildings rather than through roof cavities. It's quick, it's fast for them. They get a signature and payment and they move on. It's not the best job for the home owner. The other one here is poor system design, and people just simply not getting panels where they thought they were going to get them or the layout that they've approved. In fact, quite often I see systems on roofs where there might be 10 panels on one part of the roof and 2 on another, because obviously they've run out of room and they've just whacked 2 on the end. Those 2 are not doing anything because if they're on they will be on a separate string in the inverter, but they actually won't be producing enough voltage to fire up that particular string. So they might as well not be there. And things like that happen all the time and people aren't aware of it. So often companies are having systems, they're getting all the system design done overseas as well. We've got internal staff that are qualified system designers. Yeah, hope everything works. So I was going to say hopefully, but everything works. There's a very good, if you want to see some bad systems, there is a Facebook group called Crap Solar, which is mostly installers, but also members of the public. And they are continuously posting pictures of awful things that they see. The one on the bottom right made me laugh. I've got a friend who refers to jobs like this as looking like someone's dropped a deck of cards. But yeah, sometimes people will just put things on wherever they can, irrespective of what it looks like. But poor wiring on roofs, panels going over ridge lines, got mildew on these ones, poor connections. Some of these are actually product faults like water ingress causing hotspots and so forth. So what can you do? Choose quality brands and avoid substitutions. So don't let a solar installer switch out panels for you at the last minute, often for something cheaper. If something better, if in between you ordering and getting it installed, a higher output has come along or something is a genuine substitution, that could be valid, but a lot of companies will automatically substitute for something cheaper just to save themselves money. It's worthwhile educating yourself, ask questions. The biggest thing to do is not be rushed. So I'm a salesperson. I talk to people every day. We sell systems. We don't rush people. So Stephen's one of my customers. I hope you can attest to the fact that we didn't push you into anything. People end up buying from us, and that's what we like. And that generates referrals. There's nothing, if someone is in your home and insists on a decision, there's an imbalance of power. And I would say, because nothing is going to change between today and tomorrow and next week, genuinely. So that's my advice. Make sure the design and layout is what you want. If you don't want them on a particular roof because it can be seen from the street or so forth, and they can fit elsewhere, make sure that's not changed on you afterwards. Look at the savings calculations. And most, if someone is an approved solar retailer, it's Kosta and myself or our company, we actually have to give those. We actually have to give output expectations on our quote, and we actually give savings predictions as well, which we will then honour as part of a separate guarantee. A lot of those are exaggerated, and people will offer really crazy savings on solar, which assume that you will use all the power, for example. And typically that is just not the case. Not all the power is used from solar. Some is used as self-consumption and some is exported. This is a screenshot from one of the monitoring systems that we put on almost every system that we sell. This is called Solar Analytics. There are monitoring systems that come as straight out of the box with the inverter, such as iSolar Cloud. We install those as well. What this one shows and what we are looking at here is the yellow is solar production. The purple is the household consumption. Where it's brown, that is the purple is household consumption, and brown is the overlap. So that's self-consumption. That is the solar power that is simultaneously produced and consumed. So you can see in the middle of the day, some is self-consumed, some is exported. The part that is most valuable to you is the part that is self-consumed, because that's where you're actually offsetting the rate that you would have been paying for power at that particular time. So if you pay 30 cents per kilowatt hour, that's where you're saving it. You might only be paid 6 cents, 10 cents or something for the exported part. But if you look at monitoring like this, and this is live, it updates every 30 seconds, you can actually make decisions about whether you want to switch the air conditioning on, run the dryer, run the dishwasher, because you can say, okay, I've got spare power now. It's more or less free to me. One of the great things about solar analytics also is that it tells you expected versus actual. So if you owned this system and you were looking at it, you could say, looks like a good day. We've got a 5 kilowatt inverter. It reached a peak of 4 kilowatts. It seemed to do all right. You still wouldn't know whether it was a really good day or not. Solar analytics uses a fairly complex algorithm with weather data. They've got about 30 or 40,000 systems under observation. And there's a graph in there that says, this is what you produced and this is what you should have produced. So it's kind of like having an auditor on the system shoulder all the time. And that's one of the reasons that we like it. We use it for checking systems. And I guess one of my pieces of advice is, if you have a system, looking at the monitoring is one of the most valuable things that you can do. I do talk to people every day. And in fact, so I put a thing on Facebook about this presentation tonight, and a family friend in Victoria contacted me and said, hope you can help me. We've had solar for 5 years. I don't know if it's working. But that's a classic question. She had no idea whether it's working or not. What should you be able to expect from solar? You should be able to see it paying for itself in 3 to 5 years if you buy it outright, or being cash flow positive right from the outset if you were to finance it. Panels really can ease. I mean, there has been an escalation in warranties. Warranties for panels used to be 10 years and 12. There was a few brands like SunPower, which is American, that were 25, and that was somewhat aspirational. And over time, quality has got better, but there's been a sort of a marketing drive for the inflation of these warranties. So now the panels that we're putting on have a 25-year product warranty, a 25 or 30-year performance warranty. Let's say you got 20 years out of them. By then, there's probably going to be panels that are much higher output, and it may be worth replacing them anyway. But the panels are definitely going to last the longest in the system. An inverter should last 10 to 15 years. And if you do have to replace an inverter, that might cost you a couple of $1,000s, and therefore give your system another 10 years of life. Systems will degrade a little bit year by year, maybe 2% per year, which is not a massive amount, but you will see that. There's probably more other variabilities that occur rather than that panel degradation. That's more or less it. If anyone does want to reach out or wants a copy of the slides or something, you can email me, stuart@iqsolar.com.au. I'll be happy to share those. Yeah.
I have micro inverters.
Great. Yes, perfect.
And so is the difference between inverters and micro?
Yes. So the main, and that's a really good question. So panels produce DC current. So with one inverter, They're all cabled up together coming into that inverter. And the job of that one inverter is to produce AC current, the same as we have coming out of our power points, that blends into our power into our house behind our meter boards, just like two rivers flowing together. So you get 1 point. And if you're not using that power, it goes back out to the street. So what's flowing from the panels down to where the inverter is located is DC current, quite often at high voltages, anything up to 600 volts. Low current, but 600 volts. A microinverter sits behind the panel. It's just the size of a small notebook, one per panel, and it converts from DC to AC at that level. And then all the cabling that comes in is AC, the same as our power. They come into a joiner box called an envoy, which then does the same thing and goes into our house. There's all sorts of advantages of in-phase microinverters. You can get monitoring on every single panel. So you can actually see, so we've got clients with in-phase. We can see what every panel is producing right now, accumulated today, accumulated this month or year. So if you had a bird poo on one panel, you could go, a bird poo, yeah. If you had something, and one of the reasons that people put on microinverters is that each panel is then working independently of the others. So there is a disadvantage of a string inverter. If shade hits one panel, it has a flow-on effect. There's other ways to overcome that, such as optimizers, for example, which take that panel out of the equation, but it's still a DC power flow. Enphase is a very advanced system, big American company, and there's one other microinverter company, but I think they have no traction. They're easily the leader. They're probably a system with Enphase would easily cost you 50% more than a system with a string inverter, but there are advantages.
And then you can open up to as well. You can take a seat, and also I'll include Stephen McCulloch. Do you want me to say who you are? Stephen McCulloch is a committee member of review. He's the property manager for St. Paul's Society, and he's installed 1 megawatt of solar, 1.4 megawatts, of solar in the last year and a half. Yeah. So we'll get Stephen as well on the panel and answer 3 short questions that we have.
So grab a seat here.
So, like the same question that your friend asked me, how do I check to see that one?
Right. Yes. So if you've put on a system in the last 3 or 4 years, almost certainly it has some sort of internal monitoring app. So it will be connected to your home Wi-Fi. That data then bounces up to the cloud. You should be able to log into an app and see something not exactly the same, but like that diagram I showed you. Every inverter company has its own app. So you should be able to see that. If you have a system that didn't come with that, you can get some basic information by going to the inverter, and it's probably about as useful. It's no more complicated than looking at an old-fashioned digital watch. You can scroll through some menus. You can see what it's doing now, what it's done today, what it's done forever. But that's sort of the limit of the information. And if you keep going through, it'll tell you the voltages from each of the inputs and so forth, which is probably meaningless to most people. But there's basic information. It is possible to retrofit monitoring, such as solar analytics, to any existing system, which may look expensive. If you've got a single phase house, it might cost $700 or $800. If you've got a 3-phase house, it might cost close to $1,000. But you will then have amazing quality information. Going back to family friend Kylie, she has no idea. She's had solar for 4 or 5 years. She has no idea if it's working. So I've asked her to send me some information about what it is, because a lot of people, the salesperson might have rushed them through the process. They may have access to one of these perfectly useful apps like iSolar Cloud or something like that, but they just never logged in. So, and the information, they're then waiting for a bill to come in. and they might see that their bill is similar to what it was or down a bit, but they're wondering, well, we did use the air conditioner a bit more. There's no qualitative data in that. It's all subjective. A mistake that a lot of people make is they look at their bill, and this happens a lot in online discussions on Facebook and things. People say, oh, my solar's useless. I only got $45 back in a feed-in tariff. On this basis, it's going to take 20 years to pay for itself, or, you know. And the fact is that the feed-in tariff is not the savings from solar. It's kind of the booby prize. It's the part that you haven't consumed that you get paid a little bit for. Whereas the main benefit, that information disappears on your bill. Your self-consumption reduces the amount that you're billed, but you're not told how much that is on your bill. It just disappears. So unless, yeah.
We've got about 60 systems. My biggest problem at the moment is almost I've got too much data, but essentially it is absolutely essential. We regularly get problems. A problem, for example, that I identified is we've got a system up in Bathurst, and we keep on finding that the system gets switched off by the network. So we now can address that. We've been able to identify that through the solar analytics. But essentially, it's a very useful tool for my own home. For example, solar analytics, one, it tells me that the system's working, but the other side of it is that I've trained the rest of the household to put the dryer on during the day. That's the ideal, because I find that I use up that surplus, that bit in the yellow. I'd rather use it rather than export it. And likewise, I actually run my air conditioning during the day because because it's a brick house. It also, I find it helps retain the cold or retain the heat in the house, and the brickwork will sort of release that at night. So look, that's a theory. Maybe it's something that I get a pleasure out of. Yeah.
That's thermal mass, and that's a valid.
That's right.
That is a valid way to.
So, but certainly from the data that we're getting at work, it's incredibly useful. For example, another thing that solar analytics does, we're trying to work out at the moment whether we should go to net metering or virtual net metering, which is effectively instead of getting 7 cents a kilowatt back from the surplus power that we could generate, say, on the top of a shop, we actually can export that through the network, and we can suck it out somewhere else. So we're getting, say, 24 cents a kilowatt. So that's another benefit we're investigating at the moment. But solar analytics gives me all that data. It gives me massive. Yeah, virtual net metering is something that a lot of organizations like Woolworths do, and that's
Fantastic.
yeah. So it's just a massive tool. The other one is it tells you if you've got the value of a battery. So it will tell you what size battery you would benefit you. That's another one. There's other things coming out of it.
Yeah, the expected versus actual is one of the cleverest things that I think it does, which doesn't come through with other monitoring platforms.
Right.
But it's interesting with this thing in Bathurst you've mentioned, where for some reason it goes off. If you were waiting for a bill to come through and it was just higher, you still wouldn't know.
We
much.
wouldn't know.
You
That's
really
right.
wouldn't know. Someone has to go out to the meter board, and is it actually someone actually comes and flicks the breaker off, or
No. The
Turning it
network,
off.
the network tells that we.
I see what I mean. Yeah,
we get
due to
kicked
voltage
out,
flux.
So we're going to try
Got
and
it.
change the voltage.
Windows.
On the.
Yeah.
not sure how
Okay.
it
Now I
works.
understand. Yeah.
Great package.
It is.
Don't have it. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
No, but
Probably say, on average per year, I should get 4 kilowatt hours per kilowatt installed. So I have a 10 kilowatt system that should, on average, produce 40 kilowatt hours a day.
Yep.
That is an easy way of also, you
Yes.
don't get the detail that you do from solar.
Yeah.
It certainly also gives you, so it calculates whether there's a better retailer out there for you.
yeah.
And
So
that's-
Moving along, because
Yep.
it's amazing how many times I go to a home and people have solar, but they don't know the monitoring.
Hmm.
So, maybe they didn't put the Wi-Fi card with their system or whatever it was, and my question is, are there any retrospective
Yep.
analysis certificates?
Yep, solar analytics can be retrofit. So if you speak to almost any solar company, they all know solar analytics is a product that's freely available and free as in easily available, not free. No. It's not hard to get. Any solar company can put it on. The retrofit is a hardware-based solution.